Hi everyone, this is Blake Anderson and I'm a registered social worker and therapist here in Toronto, Ontario, and I have over 14 years of collective experience as a registered social worker and 5 years as a therapist. In this video I want to talk about the inevitable aspect of the fact that your parent's going to pass, and let's say that a funeral's coming up or a celebration of life, or it could be the case that your parent is close to death in terms of having a terminal illness. Let's say they have cancer. And you're presented with this challenge of, do you attend the funeral or the celebration of life, or do you not? In this video, I'm going to talk about considerations, ways in which you can determine this, and also how you deal with it should you not go, or even if you do go. I'm going to talk about aspects of this and considerations, particularly with a narcissistic parent that you went no contact with, and how you deal with this situation given that they're close to death or perhaps they've already passed and you have the decision to make to go to the funeral or not. When every family or parents get older and there comes a time when they're going to pass, let's say you have a parent who has just recently passed and they have their funeral or their celebration of life. It could be the case that you might even have siblings not invite you or tell you about it. Or it could be like a flying monkey or just a family friend that reaches out to you. And this is how you hear about it. But because you've been alienated or ostracized as a scapegoat from the family, sometimes the siblings don't notify you or let you know. This all comes back to some level of power games or just ways in which they treat you a non-person. The scapegoat really doesn't, if they reach out to you, that's legitimizing you in some sense, which is very odd if you think about it. But if you come from these families, you also come to expect it. You have the decision whether to go to the funeral or to the celebration of life or not. This is a choice that everyone has to make on their own terms. You can consult your own therapist or a psychotherapist or a professional that you trust, and also consult your friends or someone that you're close to. But sometimes they also won't understand it, and you're also presented with some challenges too, right? If they said, why would you not go to your parents' funeral? Because they don't understand the gaslighting or the cruelness that occurred. It's really hard to articulate and explain to them why you wouldn't attend. You're probably dealing with some guilt and shame because you want to be there as a good son and a good daughter maybe. And you also probably understand the perception is going to be a certain way if you don't attend. This is to understand that you can also reflect on some good times with your mom or your father, and they brought you into this life and maybe provided for you in terms of resources. But that was basically them being a regular father or mother, to be expected of any parent, really. But there's been a lot of cruelness over the years. It's like this, you made several attempts to reconcile with them, to reach some harmony or some at least addressing of the issue before they passed. They've probably, had their reasons not to fully engage. Maybe they went to therapy with you, but didn't budge any way or make any kind of sense of self-reflection. It's likely the case that you went no contact, and there's a reason why you went no contact. And yet you have someone that you spent, could be decades, as your father, your mother. They passed, and in some sense you want to honor their life, but you also can't be fake or not truthful to the actual relationship and the way it actually was versus the perception of the parent. And this is particularly the case if they're covertly narcissist or a communal narcissist. So it could be the case that in the community that they are respected and they have a good reputation and people consider them maybe this caring, loving person. But obviously for you, your experience in your home growing up and just the way they've been through with you for your adulthood is very much the opposite of that kind of person. And someone that has really tried to control, cause harm to you probably in multiple ways. And it could be the case too that they've already communicated that you won't be in the will, or there could be ways they are willing to throw you under the bus or aren't willing to be there for you as a support. So then why would you attend their funeral or their celebration of life? But of course, this is something you have to come to on your own terms. On average, I would say it's your choice, but you have to ask yourself, all these times that they were cruel to me, did they ever really reconcile or address the issue? I also wanted to talk about the notion of a healing fantasy. It's likely the case that you've had to grieve that because if you were in the narcissistic abuse cycle, let's say you were in the discard phase, and maybe it's been a few months, you went no contact, and were maybe angry at your parent and told yourself you'd go no contact. But then maybe a few months pass and they reach out to you, or there's some way in which you think about them and you want to make one more attempt perhaps. And then you get back into the cycle with this healing fantasy that maybe this time they'll actually get it. And if I just communicate a certain way, or if maybe they're just going to change, like maybe they'll actually see it this time. But it's likely the case that you've had to mourn that healing fantasy. You accepted, like radical acceptance, that they aren't a person that is really likely going to change. And so unless there's like a miracle, I don't know, they find Jesus, or they do some like a mushroom drug, or like something to really drastically affect their consciousness, they're likely 99% of the time not going to change. And so you've accepted that this is who they are, and they haven't made any attempt or to reconcile. Let's say that you have went no contact, and yet this funeral's coming up. There's also the aspect of there's probably family, friends, people that your family's going to be there, people that in the community that you know. These could be good people you actually care about and love. But if you could go back, usually the family, right, sit together. And so if you're at odds with your family, with your brother and your sister, and they are also, been pitted against you and have been cruel to you as well, you also don't want to go to this forced harmony, right, where you just pretend that everything's fine to give the illusion, like the persona of the family, like the superego, to give this perception that it's one cohesive family, when in reality, you know that's not the truth. And so that's something to consider. Obviously, you could go back to the funeral or to the celebration of life and navigate that on your own terms. Some people might decide that, go Grey Rock, maybe just go there just to give respects to the aspects of your mom or your father that you did and love, or just honor aspects of their life. But generally, if they put you through all these times of being cruel, and you're probably going to have family, friends there, I'm sure they'll be saying a lot of positive things. It's not like you don't see some of those things. You probably agree from the external sense. There's the internal family and the external. And so in some ways, at least, the perception of them was this good person and this hardworking person or caring person in the community. Because narcissistic people surround themselves with people who are good people in some sense, as find envy in those people, right? And they find if they can get their hooks into those kind of people, it gives them gives others the perception that they're also good as well. They also look for people with status, like a doctor or somebody respected in the community. Maybe it's those people that are going to be talking at the funeral or the celebration of life. Especially if a narcissist is covert. In Sam Vatican, right, he talks about the fact that narcissists don't actually have friends. And it's actually interesting if you go to these funeral or you go to your mom or dad's funeral, maybe some of the friends don't show up, or they might speak open. Now we're obviously speaking through video. Some people leave a message through video. But anyway, the friends might not even be showing up, or even if they are friends, they're kind of more superficial acquaintances, or they might live outside the city or farther away. So there's usually the sense that they might have this good superego image in the community, but in reality, they don't typically have very close friends. A lot of times people are now, there's live streaming of celebration of life or funerals. So that's also something that you can consider, is that maybe you just watch the live stream and you take some time to watch it, and maybe have some rituals around it, process it after, because it's likely the case that there's going to be things that be said that it's almost going to probably gaslight you, because it's such a dichotomy between the person and the image they have in the community or the perception that other people have. Some of these people are good people, and it's not entirely that they have bad intentions, or that they likely just don't know. And there's also a lot of enabling that can go on in these families. And with a narcissist or flying monkeys, they'll probably try to convince you that they're this great person or they have this great reputation. But you know for yourself the way that your mom or your father was or is. Just a consideration that maybe you could live stream it. Maybe it's processing after, writing down how you're feeling, maybe talking to a partner or a friend about it. That's just a consideration. But yeah, it's deciding on, do you want to go back to a funeral and be there with other people who are going to probably be saying a lot of positive things, and Obviously, when you want to honor someone's life, it makes sense. At some level, you probably understand too that it's not like it's not true to some degree, because they could again have this in their persona. They act a certain way. And sometimes they're even actually, like usually it's the case that narcissistic people are much more caring and generous with strangers and acquaintances versus their actual family. For them, it's just about narcissistic supply. And so that's just something to think about. It's likely you're going to be wrestling with that date when it's coming up. Some people will go to a therapist, and if they don't understand really fully this relationship and the way narcissistic abuse operates, they probably will even likely encourage you to consider going back. And they might think again, there's a lot of great therapists out there, but some just don't understand these dynamics and the ways in which it's very coercive and complex trauma. But again, because to them, they probably think it's success, right, to have communication or to find some resolution, then they might encourage that relationship and then question you if you don't. And so you have to consider which therapist you're talking to, and do they fully understand narcissistic family dynamics, understandings of narcissism and its abuse. And so that's something to think about. I think typically what happens in these situations is that I think actually what's the best to happen, it's not always easy because it's probably before they passed, right? You had one goodbye to them. So you went to your family and to your mom or your father and basically said bye to them. And sometimes it's a conflict and there's an outburst and you get fed up. And that's just the reality sometimes, is that there could have been a big blow up. That kind of gives you almost justification to know that parent isn't healthy. But at least maybe it's the last time you saw them, you went back on your own terms and you decided to go there as like a differentiated person, someone who's doing it because you wanted to say bye to your mom or your father, not because of them coercing you or acting from like anxiety, like in terms of this weaponized guilt or shame. Because particularly if they have like, they're close to death and they have terminal illness like cancer and they only have so many years to live, perhaps you want to say one last goodbye. Some of these times it's just with setting your own boundary and then acting on that boundary. You don't always have to communicate with them, but maybe instead of going back because they're forcing you, you're going back because you're doing it on your own terms. It's consideration of should you go or should you not go, understanding that you have to be true to yourself, what's going to be best for your mental emotional health. If you do go there, you're probably going to be exposed to a lot of the flying monkeys, siblings who perhaps have likely bullied you throughout the years, that don't align with you in any sort. In fact, they blame you often. And they also probably even, again, every family is different, but maybe they want to give the perception to others that this is this like cohesive family. The scapegoat takes the arrows, and the collective shadow of the family is like, in some sense, is supposed to take it, but then also supposed to show up as though the family is cohesive. And if you do that, you feel like you're not being honoring to yourself because you're just like been mistreated. But then if you don't go, you're also going to be mistreated. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Do you actually care what other people think? Some people obviously do, right? They don't want people to think that they're this bad son or bad daughter, or that there is this fault in this family. As you get an adult and you have mourned this scapegoating role and grieved your family relationship, you have to get to a point where you don't care what other people think because you put yourself first. If you're going back just to smooth things out and give the perception of this kind of harmonious family, then I think you're not being truthful to yourself. You're exposing yourself to unhealthy people in a toxic environment. This is different if you went to therapy with your mom or your dad and they were reflecting and at least spoke to it to some degree. And I think a lot of my clients and people I know that have been through this, it's like they would even take like just a sorry. And a lot of times these are just like simple things that you'd think in any family could occur. But because a narcissist is so convinced of their false self and they are like, their intentions aren't necessarily good, right? They are looking for status usually. It could be sex, it could be money. They're more concerned about other people, a narcissistic supply, than their actual kids. If you go no contact, it's likely they've made you into a bad object and have probably smeared your name to others. And then you have to ask yourself, like, why would I go back and pretend that didn't occur and give the perception to others that everything's fine? So that's just something to think about when watching online or through stream, and be reflective after, maybe journal, see your emotions, and it's likely there's going to be a lot of memories that are going to come up, and people are going to be saying things probably mostly positive, maybe even family, friends, people that you know are going to probably even reach out to you and ask, why didn't you show up? And that's tricky too. I would think just keep things on the surface. I don't think you have to necessarily give anyone explanations. They might say, I thought you and your mom were close, or I thought you and your dad were close, and everything okay? I made a decision. Thanks for your condolences. You don't even have to say the reasons why you didn't go. You just say, thanks for your condolences. I appreciate it, and put it back on them. Giving them what to say, thanking them for reaching out and for showing concern, or wishing, your mother, your father, honoring their life in some sense. These are really tricky things because people are complex. Maybe your mom and your dad have aspects in which they've showed kindness throughout the years, or at least breadcrumbed, or there has been good experiences. Sometimes that narcissism changes over time. Usually narcissists become worse. If they have a terminal diagnosis, they get sympathy from others from that. And obviously people that are sick, that need in some sense people there to be supportive. And you would be the first to be there for them. But again, like someone like Sam Vatkin says, and he says in the 80s that he was encouraging people to go no contact regardless of circumstances. And he was saying that if someone's really toxic and a narcissist, you have to go no contact to protect your mental, emotional health. And he said that in the 80s and 90s, that was very much controversial. But now it's understood to be the gold standard to limit or go no contact with a narcissist. A lot of people understand it because it's more of a headache than it is ever going to be productive or fruitful. They convert you into an internal object, and you're in this shared fantasy with them, and then there's a narcissistic abuse cycle. So there's not really a sense that you're actually having a relationship with them. So then you have to ask yourself, why would you go back? But again, you have to make that decision on your own. I'm not telling you shouldn't go back, but maybe you do go back. You could consider, like, how do you protect yourself? You can have this notion of a protective aura around you. You can go gray rock, keep things limited. Maybe you don't go to an event after the funeral, or just keep it, maybe sit by yourself, not with your family. In this video, I just wanted to talk about aspects of should you or should you not go back to the funeral. Again, you have to think about if a family, it's probably already got to the place where you went no contact and you know the way the family is. I think it's important to consider the self-doubt you might be having, the guilt and the shame, the need that you have to be a good son or a good daughter and do what is right. What might be right, though, is protecting your mental, emotional health and honoring your parent in your own way, right? So perhaps that day that they have the funeral or the celebration of life, you watch the live stream in your own way. You say your goodbyes to your mom or your dad. Maybe in another video, I'll talk about when your narcissistic parent does pass, how that can be complicated because it can be like a relief, but at the same time, you're probably going to still miss them and think about them. But it's also relief because they probably put you in some sense through hell for several months to years. And so when that person passes, it's both a gift and a curse. That's not usually mentioned in society, although I have watched some videos on that topic too. So in this video, I just wanted to talk about should you or should not go back to your parents' funeral? What are some of the implications of that? How that might impact your mental, emotional health? And ways in which you maybe alternatively could watch the stream and honor your father or mom's death in your own way. So if you did like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks and have a great day.
Hello and welcome. We're about to get into a topic that is just so personal and honestly so incredibly tough. What happens when a narcissistic parent dies? You know, for so many people, this is not some simple, straightforward period of grief. It's a minefield of conflicting feelings, of pressure from everyone around you, and a whole lot of old wounds. So let's just dive right in and start unpacking what's really going on here. And really, this is the question that's at the heart of everything, isn't it? I mean, how do you mourn a parent you also had to survive? While the rest of the world has a very specific script for what grief is supposed to look like, your reality has been something else entirely. This isn't just about losing someone. For many, it's about the loss of the person who is the main source of your pain. And that creates a really unique and often very lonely kind of grief. All right, so to really get a handle on this, we've got to start by looking at the funeral itself. For a survivor, It often feels less like a real goodbye and way more like the final act in a play that's been running your whole life. It's a performance, and suddenly you're expected to step on stage and play a part you never, ever wanted. You know, there's actually a clinical term for this feeling, which can be so validating to hear. It was coined by Dr. Kenneth Doka, and it's called disenfranchised grief. It's what happens when your grief just isn't recognized by society because it doesn't fit the mold. People expect you to be sad, full stop. They just don't have a box for the cocktail of emotions you might actually be feeling. The relief, maybe some anger, or just total confusion, right alongside any sadness. And this right here, this is the source of all that inner conflict. Because the funeral, it's for the public persona. It's for that charming, communal narcissist that everyone else knew and loved. But you lived with the private reality, the one that happened behind closed doors, a constant pattern of dismissiveness, invalidation, manipulation, exploitation, and rage. You're basically being asked to stand there and mourn a version of a parent you never actually had, while trying to deal with the memories of the one you did. Okay, so even if you get all of this on an intellectual level, the pressure to actually go to the funeral can feel immense. And it's not just other people pressuring you. There are these really powerful forces inside of you, pulling you right back into that family dynamic for one last show. And a huge part of that pull is something Dr. Lindsay Gibson calls the healing fantasy. It's that little voice deep down inside that hopes that this time, this one final act will finally be different. That somehow you'll finally get the apology, the validation, the moment of connection you spent your entire life craving. The funeral can feel like the very last chance to get that closure. And really, it's like a perfect storm of pressure coming at you from all sides. You've got society shouting, "You have to go, they were your parent." You've got that healing fantasy whispering in your ear. The whole family system is trying to push you right back into your old role, maybe the scapegoat, just to keep things normal. And then, smeared over all of it, is this thick layer of toxic guilt. And let's be really, really clear about this guilt. As therapist Jay Reed explains so well, that guilt is not a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a conditioned response. It's a button they installed in you, designed to go off anytime you even think about putting your own needs first. Choosing to protect yourself isn't malice, it's survival. And that guilt you feel, that's just the ghost of the old programming. So, how in the world do you break free from all of this? Well, the way forward starts when you can move out of that thick fog of obligation and fantasy and step into the clear light of acceptance. It's about finally seeing things not as you wish they were, but as they actually are. And this right here is the turning point. It really comes down to a single thought that can change absolutely everything and allow you to finally step out of all that emotional chaos and make a choice that is 100% your own. And that powerful realization is grounded in this idea of radical acceptance. This is your gateway to healing. It means you fully accept, deep down in your bones, that the person they were in life is the person they remained. This is not about forgiveness. It's not about saying the abuse was okay. It is simply about letting go of the hope that they would ever change. And when you apply radical acceptance to the funeral, it leads you to one inescapable conclusion. This event is not for your healing. It is the final act of PR, the last piece of image management. A parent who is incapable of empathy or self-reflection in life is not going to magically offer it from the great beyond. That hope, that's just the healing fantasy talking again. So once you get to this place of clarity, the whole question of whether or not to attend, it just changes. It's not about being a good or bad child anymore. It becomes a conscious, self-aware choice that you make based on what is genuinely best for your own soul. And this is where this idea of differentiation of self becomes so critical. Basically, what it means is your ability to hold on to your own thoughts and your own feelings even when you're in the middle of your family's emotional tornado. You can feel the pull, you can see the drama, but you don't get swept away by it. You stay grounded in you. So let's weigh this out. If you attend, you risk being completely re-traumatized. You could get cornered by flying monkeys, pulled into old arguments, and worst of all, you might break a no-contact rule that you fought so hard to establish. Now on the other side, what do you gain by not attending? You protect your peace, you honor your truth, and you make a conscious choice to not take part in a story that was never true for you. And Sam Vaknin's work really drives home why this is so important. He describes the narcissistic mindset as solipsistic, meaning they basically only recognize themselves as being fully human. Everyone else is just an object. This is exactly why no contact is so often the only way to stay safe.
So breaking it to attend an event centered entirely on their public image, well, that's a massive risk to your healing journey. Now, with all of that said, for some people, for reasons that are completely valid for them, the decision might still be to go. And if that is your choice, that's okay. But the goal is to go with a whole new strategy. You have to go in prepared, using things like the gray rock method and carrying a powerful shield to protect yourself.
This means you have to completely shift your mission. Your job is not to go there and play your old assigned role. You are not there to manage anybody else's feelings or prop up the family myth. Your one and only job is to protect your own psyche. Period.
So here's a practical toolkit for how to do that. First, state what you need or want calmly, using I statements. Don't justify your feelings. Second, try to respond from your rational brain, not your emotional one. Third, you can own your perspective without starting a fight. A simple, I see it differently, can work wonders. And finally, keep every single interaction short and to the point. Do not get sucked in.
And you can back up those external strategies with some really powerful internal ones. You can literally visualize a protective shield or bubble around you. You can use deep breathing to keep yourself calm when you feel triggered. Try to be an observer, like a scientist watching a strange experiment, instead of an actor in the play. And this one is critical. Have an exit plan. Know your limit and give yourself permission to leave the second you hit it.
Because here's the bottom line. Whether you decide to go to that funeral or not, the real path to peace doesn't run through a cemetery. Real healing begins when you turn your focus inward and decide that you're going to find closure on your own terms, in a way that truly honors your story.
See, closure isn't something that anybody else can give to you. It's a gift you finally give to yourself. It's the process of looking back at everything you went through, validating your own experience, and finally offering yourself all the compassion and understanding you were denied for so long.
And there are so many powerful ways you can do this. You could write a letter to the child you once were and tell them, I see you, I believe you, it wasn't your fault. You could create your own private ritual that honors your complex truth. You could journal and just let all of those messy, contradictory feelings pour out. Or you could connect with people who actually get it. These are the acts that create real, meaningful closure. So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this one question to think about. As you try to navigate this incredibly hard time, this is the most important thing you can ask yourself. Because when you focus on the answer, that's how you honor your own journey, that's how you protect your peace, and that's how you finally give yourself the validation you have always, always deserved.